Hi there, and thank you for tuning in to The Social Circus, where every week we dive into a variety of topics covering social media, mindset, and how to run your business. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to episode 171 of The Social Circus. I am your host, Sarah Thompson, and today I'm going to be doing the first in a two-part series on it's actually on a webinar that I did that was insanely popular, and it made me realize that a lot of us are struggling in this space. And I thought I'm actually going to turn this webinar into a two-part podcast series. Now, if you really liked listening to this, what I'm going to do is in my show notes, I'm going to put a link to the webinar that you can request a copy of for free and download it so that you can access this information. Because sometimes it's easier to put it all together in one big hit. But I ran it a few weeks ago in my business and I couldn't get over how well received it was and how excited people were. So, bit of a drum roll. Today we're going to be talking about, so the webinar was called Beyond the Scroll, Marketing Without Social Media. Now, the reason that I've decided to talk about this topic was mainly because it was hugely popular and everyone was super excited for me to talk on it. But there has been in this year, in 2025, so much going on in social media that has made many of us feel quite disillusioned with it all. And here are things that I hear every single day in my mastermind, in my membership, in my coaching clients. I hear things like, I'm doing all the things. I'm spending hours of my time and my energy that I don't feel like I particularly have. I'm creating reels, I'm filming, I'm posting, I'm editing, I'm in Canva, I'm doing all the things, but I'm barely getting seen. And I feel like I'm falling behind no matter how hard I try. And then when I go onto social media, it looks like everyone else has this figured out. Now, if you heard those words and felt them, the first thing I want to say is the reason that I shared them is because so many people that I work with feel like this about social media. And right now in this 2025, and I've talked about this a couple of times, it's been an incredibly tough year. Fiscally, economically, it's been really, really hard. We're watching businesses all around us closing and failing and people getting jobs. And that does a lot to our mindset. And a lot of people are wondering, why did I start a business? Is this really worth it? And if this feels like you're in the right place, because I'm going to share all of my tips today. And as I mentioned, if you want to grab the webinar, I'm going to put a link for you so you can download it for free. But everything I'm sharing today is what is included in the webinar. So it just is about how easy you'd like to consume the content. But social media is a fickle beast. And it's really, really interesting because as my children would tell me, I'm an OG of social media. I have been in this game for well over a decade. When I started my business, which by the way, I didn't even have a name for it at the time. I think I just called myself Sarah Thompson Consulting. I wasn't properly branded or anything. And I used to convince small businesses to pay me to set up their Facebook account. Now, I cannot tell you how good my sales skills are because people would pay me. Mostly people would say to me, I don't need social media. I've got a website. I don't need social media. I've got a list of clients. I don't need social media because I'm already doing this. And now here we are 14 years later, and I did probably one of my most successful webinars called Marketing Without Social Media. And that should give you an indication of that huge change that has happened in a decade. And the reason I say a decade is because it happened slowly, okay? Change always happens slowly. It depends on how closely we're watching it as to how fast it feels. So here's the thing. Social media has become the dominant form of marketing. And I often look back into my corporate time. I worked in corporate marketing and I worked in an industry called FMCG, which is fast moving consumer goods. And that industry is everything that you see in the supermarket. And I've worked in almost every aisle of the supermarket in different companies that I worked for. And our marketing consisted of supermarket shelf marketing. It consisted of magazine, print, radio, TV, outdoor. And then we used to do a whole lot of PR stuff, which was super fun. The only online marketing that we did is we had a website and we did build a customer database list, an email list, very early innovators in that. But beyond that, that's what it looked like. Okay. And I often have moments, as many of us do, of like, I wonder what my career would look like if I step back into that FMCG world of fast moving consumer goods. And I still can't help but watch ads and see what people are producing, because we used to do big budget ads that were amazing. And now everything is done in tiny little snippets, which is what ads always were, but done in reels, done by influencers, and it's a very different market. So what we have noticed is that it's harder to find people. In the olden days, when I used to do big kid marketing in big consumer marketing, it was easier to find people. People would sit down at 6 o'clock as a family and they would watch the news and they would watch all the TV commercials, and it was really easy to find them. Nowadays, and you look at your own home and your own life, in the evening, my husband and I will often sit and we listen to music. We really enjoy music. Sometimes we'll watch a TV show. Mostly it's on a streaming service, which is ad-free. My kids love gaming. My husband loves gaming. So they're not plugged into the traditional media channels. And so it makes people very hard to find. And so traditional marketing is very hard. And the hardest thing is there is so much social media. There are so many platforms, and they all require you to sell your firstborn, and hopefully your kidney to go with it. Okay. So I understand your frustrations, because I have been in marketing, just as a little side note, since last century. That's how long I've worked in marketing. So I have seen this change going on, and I want to really reassure you that however you feel is very, very normal. Now, this year, we've got the kind of icing on the cake of social media, because there's a whole bunch of crazy things happening. I think one of the biggest ones is what we've seen happen on Meta. So I would like to think you know who Meta is, but just in case you don't, Meta is the parent company that owns brands such as Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Messenger, WhatsApp. Okay, so they are the big kids on the block in terms of social media. They are the most dominant platform. They have the number one platform, Facebook. And what they do is really, well, how do I say it? What they do has a huge influence on most of us in terms of our marketing, because most of us are on 2 or 3 Meta platforms, okay? So one of the things that we've seen happen this year is people having their accounts on either Facebook or Insta shut down and disappearing overnight. And this is really scary times, because if you're like me, you've built an audience with lots of care, the people who follow you are people who are interested in your business. And then suddenly one glitch, one automated flag, one AI algorithm change, and your Insta or your Facebook account is gone. You can't access your page. You can't access your ads. There's no human support. There's no warning. And this has been a really interesting thing to sit on the sidelines and watch, because if you lose that, where does your business stand? And I always like to say this, because you do not own your Facebook business page. You do not own your Instagram profile. And taking that a step further, you do not own or have the right to access the information of anyone who follows you on those platforms, okay? You are, and the phrase is actually, it's called a sandbox in tech terms. You play in their sandbox. They get to set the rules and they can kick you out at any time, okay? You know, if that, hopefully that analogy helps you understand it, but it's really, really hard because, and the Australian government has kicked up a little bit about this, because Meta obviously has no tech support and you have no right to recourse. And there's been some big cases, the EU, of course, always leading the way. People have complained to the media about their account. I recently had a client who works in children's protective behaviours have her social media account suspended. And what this meant to her business is she has a Facebook group with educators in it, like thousands of them, who she regularly shares information and content with about. And obviously her work is very timely and very topical, and she lost it all in an instant. Now, she was devastated. And it is really, really hard if that happens. So today I'm not talking about if you lose your socials. I'm talking about why we need to have other platforms other than social media. The other thing that you will have noticed that you may have seen and kind of gone, what's this? The phrase that was coined, it's called AI slop. Okay. And what that means is images or videos that are generated by AI are dominating our feed. So Your carefully crafted posts are being buried under, I guess, what we would call an algorithmic AI noise. Now, what that means is, and think about your own experience, when you log on to anything with a news feed now, 20 to 40% of your feed, I would say it's high if I'm really honest, I'm quoting off an article, is 20 to 40% of the feed, the content in your feed is content you did not ask for. So that you'll see content and you'll look at it and go, why am I being shown this? And then next it'll have a follow or a suggested group or things like that. It often feels hollow, it feels irrelevant and very overwhelming. But what the consequence of that is that your posts are not getting seen, okay? So people who follow you, who might actually be interested in your business, are not able to see your content. And this means that organic reach has all but disappeared, okay? So you're showing up, but no one is seeing you. So you might post something real, something meaningful, and then you get absolute crickets. So Instagram reach, and I'm recording this in late 2025, Instagram reach has dropped to just over 3.5%. Facebook, let's be honest, it's more like 1 to 2% of your followers. So unless you pay, your voice gets buried. And this is why social media feels really tough and feels really difficult. So I want to talk about marketing because that is actually my zone of genius. I've been in this space for a very long time. And I want to talk about the 6 pillars of marketing. Now, if you don't have a background in marketing, like most business owners don't, this may be new to you, and the pillars have changed. So obviously when I did my undergraduate degree last century, I graduated in 1995, the pillars of marketing looked very different because they were called above the line and below the line, and they were often just called by the platform that they used. And the platforms were different. As I said, there were things like radio, TV, print, outdoor. And the platforms have changed, but the concepts of marketing have not. So I want to talk to you about the pillars of marketing and remind you, you know how to market your business, but you just have to think about it using other platforms, okay? So the 6 pillars that I'm going to talk about today, and they're what I call aligned sustainable marketing, because often social media can feel like it's really difficult and not sustainable, and it can feel out of whack with our values. And I often feel like that about social media. So here are the 6 that I'm going to share with you over today and next week's episode. So the first one we're going to talk about is email marketing. And anyone who knows me knows that I would consider this to be my biggest asset in my business, is my email list, of which I nurture and love and grow every single day. Okay. The next one is SEO and evergreen content. Okay. And I'm going to talk about those 2 together, where you let your content work in the background while you can rest and play, hopefully. Collaborations and guest features, where you share your message with a new audience that is through aligned partnerships, and they can take many different forms. And then there are things like podcasting and what we call long form content. So this builds trust and shares your voice in a space that allows depth and meaning. Digital products and funnels, which allow you to create offers that serve and sell without you needing to show up live. And then number 6 is our human connection and word of mouth. So please never underestimate the power of genuine conversations and real relationships. So those are the 6 that I'm going to dive into over today's episode and next week's episode, because what I really want to do is inspire you to think about, what else can I be doing? Okay. And I know, and hopefully I've given you a long introduction. I know that social media is frustrating. I know that it feels relentless and overwhelming. And what I really want you to consider from today and next week's episode is, am I doing all of the things in my business, or am I doing social media as my only pillar of marketing and everything else is getting neglected? Okay. So let's start with the first pillar, which is email marketing. Now, the reason why I love this so much is because I get to put people on my list who I believe are a good fit for my business. So the people on my email list should be business owners who are interested in digital marketing, digital products, and social media. Now, if for some reason I've attracted the odd person outside of that, I might have attracted someone who is maybe interested in Canva, who is interested in it for maybe they're retired and they want to learn how to do design. But I would say 99% of people on my list tick that criteria. Now, email marketing is about nurturing a community that is truly yours. Now, when I say that, remember I said social media, you don't own your page, you don't own your profile, you have no right to access the content or information of people who have followed you, you do not own your fans. All of that, remember, it's someone else's sandbox that they let you play in. Your email list is the only audience that you truly own, okay? Emails go straight to your people, okay? No algorithm, no guessing. Now, it is a space for connection, storytelling, and genuine value. And I want to just say this, you do not need a huge list. It definitely helps. But remember, everybody started with one person on their email list and we grew it from there. Whether you have 10,000, 20,000, 100, multiple hundreds of thousands, we all started with one. Okay, so my advice to you is please start, okay? Start building an email list. And remember, it's all about consistency and it's about showing up with heart. Now, one of the things I want to say about email marketing is that if you follow anyone who is from the US, the way in which they do email marketing there is quite different to the way in which we do it here in Australia. They do a lot more email marketing. Like I send to email my list probably once a day, which is a lot. But my email list is pretty resilient and they don't tend to unsubscribe at any higher rate than about 0.2. Okay. When I do a launch, I might email more and people still don't unsubscribe. So here's what I want you to understand. If you're on my email list and you find it too much, remember that you hold all the power. My job is to email you and to entice you to open that email and to learn more about my business and maybe take up one of my offers. You as the recipient have all of the power. First of all, you can decide whether to open my email or not. Second of all, you can decide whether to read it or not. You can decide whether to click on a link to buy something. You can even decide to unsubscribe. Now, my job as a business owner is really to share what I know and make offers. Okay, that is the primary reason that we do what we do. I've got to demonstrate my expertise and give you offers that will help you in your business. That's what my job is. Now, with email marketing, people will always say to me, I don't want to send too many emails. I don't want to upset people. I don't want them to unsubscribe. Now, here's the thing. My email list, I used to send an email many years ago, once a quarter. I went to once a month and I went to once a week. And I mostly send one once a day now. So I have trained my audience to get used to that kind of heavy emailing, and they're okay with that. So I want to be really clear about that. I have grown my audience to be fine with it. But just to remind yourself, like, don't start today and go, I'm going to email every day. It'll be too much for you. I would suggest to you that once you start building email list, I used to say once a month, but I actually believe once a week is a really good amount of consistently, because it keeps your business top of mind with your audience. Okay. And that's really, really important. So remember, your job is to share what you know and make offers, and your email marketing is a great place to do that. So my advice to you is to start building your list. So remember, when people read and open your message, this is when the magic happens. So email open rates currently sit around 22 to about 42%, depending on your industry. And remember, I said social media organic reach is 1 to 2%. So it's a big difference. Email is considered to be 40 times more effective than social media at converting. And it's reach that belongs to you. It is not managed by the algorithm. So I just want to say I've quoted those statistics. I will put the links to the articles that I got them from in my show notes. If you want to see where I got them from, I'm totally fine with that. But here's what I want you to understand. If you hit someone's inbox and they open it, they're probably going to read it, okay? I tend to not open emails I don't have time to read. I either come back and delete them or come back and read them. And my habits are very indicative of how people behave about their inbox. So here's what I want to encourage you to get started this week, okay? I want you to start an email list. And if you're not using anything to do email marketing, the simplest and easiest tool to use is a free one called MailerLite. And I'll spell that for you, MailerLite, MailerLite. Now, this is an amazing piece of software. It will ensure that you're compliant with all of your country's legislations and laws around spam and privacy. It is free to use. It is really robust. It allows you to collect data, build landing pages, set up email automations, all of the things. I love it. The only reason I don't use it is because I outgrew it and I have a much bigger system in Simplero now. I used MailerLite for years. I want you to get started this week. I want you to take some people that you've worked with, because under Australian law, if you've worked with someone, they can reasonably identify who you are. You can put them on your email list. And I want you to send one welcome email that feels like a love note to your new subscribers. And I want you to think about creating or refreshing a freebie that helps people, and send an email offering them the freebie and giving it to them, and share a story, a tip, or even some behind the scenes. And the other thing I want you to think about is, do you have an email sign-up form? Is it easy to find and simple to use? So I want you to think about that. Like, have you got an email list? Have you started with it? And are you actively nurturing and growing it? Okay, so I really want you to focus on that. Now, the second pillar that I want to talk about is SEO and evergreen. Now, SEO, for those of you who are not aware, stands for search engine optimization. Okay. Now, this has been going under some radical change in the last 12 months, mainly driven by AI. And for those of you who know me, particularly for us service-based businesses, I want to be really clear about that. SEO is not one of the tools that I've ever focused on in my business. It's a little bit of snake oil, a little bit of jiggery pokery. I'm not a big lover of it. However, I just want to say, if you have a bricks and mortar business or you service a very specific location, SEO should be high on your list. So if you're a plumber and you service the Perth metro area, you should make sure your SEO is optimized for that. For people like me who are online, if you type in digital marketing, I'm going to come up hopefully on page 30. Underneath a ton of people from India who offer digital marketing. It is not relevant to my business, okay? So first of all, you should understand what SEO is and understand if it's important to your business. Now, what I want you to think about is AI now allows you to understand and use SEO. Go put your website into ChatGPT and say to it, please help me improve the SEO on my website. Don't go and spend any money with anyone at this point, and see what you can do yourself. There's plenty you can do yourself. Now, one of the great things for SEO, which is also great if people are asking questions of Google or Bing, is our long form content. So this is blog posts, things like that. All of these build your online presence, and they will keep working long after you have hit published. So what I like about this is you're not chasing trends, you're creating value. You show up once and your content keeps working for you, and you get found by people who are looking for what you do. I love that. And you get to create in a way that can feel spacious, thoughtful, and really calm, and that you don't have to be everywhere every day. Just findable is what matters. So I want to think about evergreen content, okay? And I want you to think about, if Google could answer one question for your dream client, what would that be? And I want you to write a short answer for that and create it into a blog post, okay? And then I want you to create 3 pins on Pinterest, because remember, Pinterest is all about searchable content. And then link it to your freebie, your blog, or your offer. I want you to think about repurposing an Instagram post into a mini article. And I want you to add keywords to your website on your homepage or about section. And then I want you to consider, do you have that lead magnet, that freebie for people to opt in on your email list? And is that aligned, and does it feel helpful for your audience? Okay. So there's a bunch of actions I would like you to take on your SEO and evergreen content that are going to help you today. I don't want you spending money. I want you doing this yourself. Now, the third and final thing I would like to talk about today is collaborations and guest features. Now, this is something that I think we often don't consider, and I think we probably consider it to be, if I'm famous and if I'm really big, people are keen for this. But remember, lots of us are not big and famous, and we're really keen to collaborate with other people, because the purpose of collaboration is that it puts you in front of a new audience, okay? So you get to borrow someone else's audience that should feel like it's generous for both of you. You can be a guest on a podcast. You can join a bundle. You can co-host a workshop. You can say align to opportunities that feel like they fit within your business. And then your business grows through being seen and trusted. So the right partnership can create ripple effects for months and even years. So remember, connection creates momentum. It's not just about visibility. You get to be seen in spaces that already feel safe and trusted. And it's not just about performing, it's about sharing. So aligned partnerships will bring new energy, new ideas, and new opportunities. Okay. So you can be part of someone else's ripple and they can become part of yours. So if we're going to talk about how do we start with collaborations, start small and start soft and start where it feels right. Okay. So write a list of 3 podcasts that you would like to be a guest on. Okay. And reach out to them and say, could I be a guest on your show? Make sure you've got a 1-pager to pitch yourself. But remember, this is not as scary as you think. For someone who has a podcast, I get pitched every single day in my inbox, mostly from podcast booking agencies. Sadly, they don't listen to my podcast. They'll write some trite about one of my episodes. They usually pitch me men. And if you hadn't noticed from the 170 episodes previously, I haven't had a single bloke on my podcast because one of my goals is to allow women to amplify their voices, and my podcast helps do that. So all of my guests to date have been women. So please don't pitch yourself on a podcast you've never listened to or pitch yourself inappropriately like that. But put yourself out there, drop someone a DM into the Insta and say, I love your podcast, this is why I love it. I think I'd love to be a guest on Here's Why, and tell me why. I want you to think about reaching out to a business friend and suggest a joint live or an email swap. I want you to consider a free or low-cost bundle that you can join that will fit into your niche. I tend to do bundles about once a year, and they're pretty good. Write a short guest blog or article for someone's site or for a newsletter. And then I want you to do this, and this is scary, but it's kind of easy. I want you to DM or email someone whose work you admire just to say hi and start a conversation. Now, I have made some cool digital friends from doing this, and it's not something I thought I would do because it feels a little bit scary. And if you're listening to me, you're probably thinking, oh, but she's Sarah from Online Social Butterfly. I'm just Sarah, and I'm just doing my thing right now, sitting at home in my home office, recording my podcast. I'm not anyone special. It's your perception of me. Okay. So remind yourself of this, that we're all special and that all of us are human beings behind a brand. Okay. So if you were to reach out to me and pitch to me, if you made it really enticing, I'm probably going to say yes. So this is my invitation to encourage you to reach out to me, preferably on Insta, because that's where I like to hang out. But I want you to think about, why would you be a good guest on my podcast? Why would I want to have you in there? What are you going to offer as value to my audience? And if you can think of those things, you can do like joint Insta lives. You can do, like we said, workshops with people. You can do swaps. There's lots of ways in which you can collaborate and do guest features. I've just shared a few of them with you today. So that actually gets us to the end of our 3 pillars for today. Now, remember, this is part 1 of a 2-part series on marketing without social media. So you will have to tune in next week for the 2nd episode. But if you're super keen and excited, you can download my webinar, which is called Beyond the Scroll, Marketing Without Social Media. The link will be in my show notes. The webinar is free for you to watch. It's one of my most popular webinars I've done this year. And it inspired me to do this podcast. So if you're loving it and you need to access all of it, or you wanted to take notes, the link will be in my show notes for you to come and sign up, download the webinar, and get cracking on those others. Now, I hope you feel excited and inspired today. And I really hope that you're going to take some action on some of the points that I have talked about today. So until next week, have a great week. Take some inspired action on those 3 pillars that I've shared, and I will catch you the same time next week on The Social Circus. Thanks so much for tuning in to The Social Circus. As your host, Sarah Thompson, I am thrilled that you've chosen to spend your time hanging out with me. I would be so grateful if you could spare an extra moment to go and leave me a review on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you even felt more excited, you could share my podcast with your friends who you think would get great value from it. Thanks so much again for tuning in.